Di. Thanks for checking in today. Today I'm telling my cancer story because I'm a quilter and quilts have been an integral part of my healing from my cancer. Before I start, I do want to show this one off. I'll just hold it up here. Beautiful purple iris quilt that was hand appliqued and hand quilted by my grandma. It was in my trousseau. I'm a very lucky girl, I know, to have a grandma that gave such a beautiful gift. In June of 2013, I had a dimple on my breast and I went for my regularly scheduled screening in July of 2013. When I went in for my screening, they fast-tracked me through to a physical exam and then to a biopsy. This is the first time I'd had a biopsy. Because of my breast tissue, I always had the physical exam, so it was nothing new to me and I wasn't worried at all. But when I had the biopsy, I could tell that the doctor was a little nervous about it, and I was like, I'm not worried. And this was on a Thursday, and the engineer was with me and she says, you know what, we'll probably get the results back Monday or Tuesday. So I'll be calling you either Monday night or Tuesday morning. And I go, great, no problem. And I went on with the rest of my day. Bruised and sore, biopsies are not fun. The next morning, I had a real estate closing. As I was coming home from that closing, the phone rang, and it was the radiologist who had just done my biopsy, and she said, are you driving? And I said, I am. She goes, would you mind pulling over? And I said, oh, no need to. You told me what I already need to know. And she goes, we need to talk in detail, so I'll call you back in a minute if you pull over. So I did. I pulled over under a tree in a parking lot of an Albertsons, and I still drive by and look at that tree and remember everything that happened that day. By the time I pulled over, I was numb. I didn't know quite how to deal with this. I was just numb. And it very surreal. She called and we talked, and she told me that I had ER positive breast cancer, which means it's estrogen. It was all estrogen related, so it was to deal with my hormones. And she told me that you need to get this out next month. And it was the end of July. And I said, where do I go? What do I do? She gave me referrals. I started talking to doctors. I didn't call them until that Monday. Let me tell you about that weekend. I called the engineer and told him what the news was, and he kicked into engineer mode full time. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about a thing. We're going to get you reconstruction. You're going to be fine. You'll never know what happened. We'll do this. We'll do this. And I'm just like, whoa. Wait a minute. I didn't want to talk about it. And I said, I need some time. I can't talk about this right now, which really frustrated him because he's a fixer. So I gave him the assignment of calling our children and my mom. And I said, please, I don't want anybody else to know. I think my bestie knew, Patricia. She's like cousin. She's in my quilting group. So I think he called her as well. So I came home. I again was just like in a daze, trying to process this news. And I went to my safe space, and that was my sewing room. And I had just barely started a quilt top, and I had another one lined up ready to go. Well, in 24 hours, I had pieced 2 quilt tops. I just had my big jug of water. I stayed in the room and I just quilted, and that's what I did. And it was cathartic and it helped. And it gave me something to do with my hands while I thought about this. After consulting with the surgeon, he had me read a whole bunch of cancer stories on the American Cancer Society website. And of all the stories I read, everybody that had a lumpectomy fought cancer multiple times. Not everybody, probably 90% of them. And I'm like, ooh. And I picked up on that, and I didn't want to have that done. I was afraid of this. I didn't want to fight it twice. So I opted for a mastectomy, not only on the one breast, but a double mastectomy. Because of my vanity, I didn't want one to be saggy and one to be perky. So I had my double mastectomy scheduled for the 9th, went in for my surgery, and it's a brutal surgery. I just have to tell you, emotionally, it was horrible. The doctor came in the next day, and he says, well, I have some good news and some bad news. Like, oh no. The good news is this was like a rock. It was not connected to anything. Your lymph nodes were clean. This is not spread. So we got it out clean. And the biopsy on your other breast tissue came back all precancerous. So he said, good decision to have a double mass. It wouldn't have been a matter of if, but when you would have cancer again. So I was grateful for that decision. He goes, but the bad news is it was huge. It was a little bit bigger than a golf ball, and that's huge, and size trumps everything. So you have to have chemotherapy and radiation, and I was devastated. I was even more numb. We came home that night, and you've had major surgery. You've had your boobs cut off, and they send you home the next day. It's brutal. That's just all I'm gonna say. But I started to heal, and the reality, you have to heal before you can have the treatments. And the reality that I was going to have chemotherapy and radiation sunk in, and I was ticked off. I was mad, I was angry, and I'm not that type of a woman. I'm very positive and happy and perky. And so I was angry for about a week and a half or two. And I went to a choir I was singing in where a friend of mine sang, and her daughter posted on Facebook, please pray for my mama. I said, hey Lori, why am I praying for you? And she goes, oh, I've been diagnosed with cancer. And I go, oh my gosh, me too. She said, what do you have? And she goes, well, mine is in my stomach. And I think she said it was in her spleen, and it was crawling up her vena cava. That's the main artery that goes to your heart. And she says, I've been given a year to live. And I was just frozen with shock. She says, I'm really okay with dying because I know I'm going to be with my husband who's passed on, but she goes, I want to see my grandchildren run and laugh and play, and I want to see my children raise my grandchildren. She goes, and I want to hear my daughter sing. Her daughter had a beautiful voice, and I instantly changed my attitude. I thought, I get to live. And that was really emotional for me when I realized that I got to live. And anyway, I immediately my mind started churning. And I thought to myself, I got to make her a quilt. And I texted her daughter, found out her favorite colors. This was like on a Tuesday, and on Friday I'd gotten everything, the pattern, and I was making her a quilt. And so I had it made and quilted and delivered to her in a week. It was so healing to give her this quilt, and she loved it so much. In fact, here is a picture of her. She's got it in the hospital, and I know it brought her a lot of comfort, and she took it to the hospital with her. And here she's snuggled in her hospital bed with it. And when her daughter gave me that picture, I just sobbed. And I felt like I'd contributed something worthwhile, and it made me feel a little bit less guilty for living. Well, I do know when she passed away that her daughter, sweet daughter, got that quilt, and I love that quilt meant so much to their family that her daughter wanted it. Anyway, she lived about another year and a half before she passed away. I started chemotherapy in November of that year, and by Thanksgiving Day, my hair was coming out in clumps. It was so gross. And my daughter said, hey, I'm not letting you cook anything. I'm not going to risk it in the food. So I agreed to let her do this, and she took me downstairs and we shaved my head. And it was, again, really hard to let somebody shave your head. And in fact, here's a picture of me. I found out I have a pointy head, you guys. This picture's been out there a little bit, so it's towards the end. I don't have any eyebrows in it, as you can see, and very few eyelashes. After my head was shaved, something happened. I couldn't sleep at nights because your head is cold. All of your heat escapes out your head, and it's amazing how much your hair insulates your head. So I started using this skull cap. It's fleece, and it kept me warm so I could sleep at night. And you look like a dork in it, but you look like a dork without any hair. So what the heck, right? Chemo was not fun. I wore wigs. I thought they were so smart looking at the time. And I look back at pictures of me in my wigs, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I look like that. They're so obviously wigs. After talking to the radiation oncologist, I opted out of radiation. And she agreed with me, which is a really great decision. March of 2014, I ended my treatment. You live with this stuff called survivor's guilt. Anybody who's been through it knows what I'm talking about. It's not fun. My heart just goes out to people who are suffering from cancer, and I've got a lot of acquaintances and friends who have been suffering. I find out they're suffering with this, and my go-to is, oh, I've got to make them a quilt. And that's what this whole month is going to be about. I've got different quilts that I'm going to be showing you, skill sets that I'm going to be teaching you, and my goal is to encourage you to help someone. Maybe it's someone in your family, maybe it's a friend, but you guys are all quilters. Let's flood the world with love and hugs and warm quilts. And you will make a difference in someone else's life, I promise you, by doing this. Stick with me. I'm going to set up a playlist for all of my October videos. They'll all be related to cancer stories. I'll get through it if you will. Start thinking of someone that you can make a quilt for that's struggling, and it doesn't have to be cancer. Maybe they're going through COVID or something awful, but they bring so much comfort. Let's take care of those that are hurting with the quilt. And I'll see you next week.